Welcome back to Inside Gaming Reviews. Today we are reviewing the game we started this channel to cover, so let's do it. Let's fulfill our destinies. Today we're talking about Stranding. Yes, Kojima's masterwork is here. I played the game, I finished it. It's been a journey.
I have not played the game at all.
Yeah, Zach will be the representative for you, the audience, who has no idea what the hell's going on, and I'll try my best to lay it out there. The goal of all of this, I want to be clear, like, I typically take this approach to a lot of games, but out of everything, Death Stranding is this the most. It's not to tell you if the game is good or bad. It's to tell you if it's for you. A lot of the times people like to treat game quality like it's objective. I think in Death Stranding, more than anything, it can be very much down to taste and your willingness to endure, let's call it pretense, because if you've seen the pre-release material, there's a lot of that. So let's cover two big things first. There's a lot to cover, let's get right into it. So yeah, the story actually does make sense.
What?
I know, weird. Most of it. The world makes sense by the end of it. Some of the plot gets very ethereal by the end, and that's kind of by design, leaving it open to your interpretation.
This takes place in America, correct?
Yes, in very literal America, but in the far future. And the other thing to cover right off the bat, this is a video game. There is a game there. You don't see it much, but running around the world and delivering stuff is a game. And there are mechanics and design there that make it actually fun and very interesting to play. Very well designed. And there are some less than savory parts. If you hated like weapons breaking in Breath of the Wild, or the really slow pace of Red Dead Redemption 2, those are probably red flags that you may not be cool with a lot of what's happening in Death Stranding. That doesn't make it bad, it's not for you. So I can say right away that the game is well designed, but it's not for everybody. And the intensity and, pretense of the story might alienate a lot of people, and it's okay if that's you. Let's get into it. The story is, I think, the big thing that's walloped a lot of people right over the head. So like you said, this isn't the far future, it's in actual America, but it's in a distant, kind of mid-apocalypse future that's survived an event called the Death Stranding. It's an actual event in the history of the game. So this is an extinction event that eliminated a significant portion of the Earth's population. This is all similar in vibe to this sort of last shred of humanity pursued by an unknown mysterious enemy kind of thing that is, it's in stuff like Attack on Titan and Battlestar Galactica. It's like, what can we hold on to that makes us human? And that's a lot of what the setting of Death Stranding is and what a lot of the stories within the narrative explore.
Packages.
Yes,
that's our only
Amazon Prime is the one thing we've got. Let's break it down a little bit more. The Death Stranding basically broke down the barrier between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Death is a reality that has been observed and quantified. Now, the spirits in the world of the dead are returning to the world of the living, or rather they're getting trapped halfway between and returning to the world of the living instead of going to the world of the dead. They are referred to as beached things, or BTs.
Very technical.
Yeah, these are, so much of this is like using future tech to try to quantify death and the spirit, and to some degree it's successful. So BTs are these invisible ghosts that yank the living to the other side, and you can only see them when you're connected to a bridge baby or a BB. The bridge baby is half dead and half alive because it's connected to a still mother, a mom who died in birth but is kept as a vegetable, and then its womb is the tank that it's in is meant to mirror the womb of its mother. So yeah, it gets all very wacky and pretty metal.
Are these BTs, like, do they kind of serve as the primary, like, enemy of the game?
They're one of many.
But they can do you harm?
Yes, they can, sort of. They can't kill you.
Huh?
At some point, I'm gonna stop answering questions because discovering the answers to these questions are valuable and interesting because the world is actually very well thought out.
Yeah, we are trying to keep this pretty spoiler-free.
The world of Death Stranding is broken and disconnected. People are terrified by this pending death, ghost, unknown enemy that they've secluded into disparate pockets and encampments. And basically, the human experience is now separate and everyone's trying to just live out their final days alone. That's the setup. It's important to talk about the interpretation of the game since that is theoretically where a lot of your enjoyment might come from, because it also asks you to sit through a lot of story sequences. So if you're not down to sort of participate in the mental gymnastics of what this game's all about, another sign it may not be for you. Moving on, basically the discovery of the dimension of death, and especially the buffer zone in between, known as the strand, is the operative element that drives a lot of the world design. It allows people to transmit data instantaneously because time doesn't pass in the chiral dimension, or dimension of death. There's lots of talk about the chiral network, which as far as I can tell is just a total parallel or an analog for the internet and how it works today. So it connects people through a dimension of death or non-life, which is essentially electricity, and profoundly changes the world, and we're all using it, but we don't completely understand it. We have no idea what the internet's gonna do to human society, and we're starting to see some of those negative effects now. So there's a lot of that analysis going on in Death Stranding. We are harnessing this dimension of death to serve mankind, but we don't know a thing about it or what it's going to do to us, which led to, presumably, the initial Death Stranding. Lots of other headspaces there, yeah.
The more online and on social media we are, the less human we become, therefore becoming more of a husk of a person more so detaching ourselves from life and into a realm of death. I get it.
Yes. I mean, so that is just step one. You have just blown the snow off the top of the iceberg that goes down into the core of the Earth. It gets heavier than that by far. So like I said, I'm not going to go too far into the headspace of this because there's a lot there, and I think discovering it is part of the enjoyment of the game, but that's just the tip. So if you enjoyed that, then feel free to push in all the way. But there is an actual game there, like I said. The story sort of sets up the actual flow of the game. The main narrative thrust is that you, Sam Bridges Porter, have to reconnect human civilization to share knowledge and technological advancement in an effort to understand the Death Stranding event and rebuild society going forward. The game opens with you just completing a delivery, and then you're thrust into world events that then have you tasked with connecting the entire continent back together. The game actually mirrors this review in context, in that you'll have to sit through a lot of story before the game actually begins. I want to say about 3.5 to 4 hours. Wow. So we're trying to shortcut it a little bit for you.
Okay.
There are some very short interactive sequences, but it's mostly like, walk down this road. Okay, another cutscene. Another cutscene, another cutscene, another cutscene. Go through this menu, pick this thing, great cutscene. It does slowly open up at around the 4-hour mark. So that's when you become a futuristic Amazon Prime delivery man. You know, it adds up since in the far future, and this is more lore, AI and robots already do all the work. There's basically no human work left to do. All that they have to do is transport physical goods that cannot be 3D printed. So that's the only job left. Like babies. Like babies. I mean, yeah, babies. So the game itself is you as Sam, navigating terrain and avoiding dangers. That's it. Get from point A to point B. It's very man versus nature kind of conflict, if you want to break it down that way, which is honestly extremely refreshing. It's not just, shoot everything in the head and then watch a bar get bigger.
It's not like, oh, here's an enemy encampment over this hill, gotta find a way to infiltrate it. It's like, there's some of that too, I'm assuming.
Some of that too, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sometimes you do have to get cargo back from fanatical delivery men who have stolen the cargo. But the goal is not to kill everyone, it's just to get the cargo where it's going. Okay. So it does have actually a very defined gameplay loop in that regard. You accept a delivery order, you prepare for the delivery, you see where it's going, what the terrain's like. You stock up on supplies, set out, travel to the destination, deliver your cargo, and then accept your next order. The active traversal is actually, it's really interesting due to how complicated the world simulation can be. So let's tick down the elements that are in the open world. First of all, there's just the terrain. You can't climb sheer surfaces. It's not very Breath of the Wild in that way. But you can bring ladders and ropes, but those have weight and dimension, so you can't just carry everything. You have to make evaluated decisions about what you bring and where.
There's encumbrance.
Exactly, yes. I mean, the whole game is encumbrance because you're carrying shit everywhere.
Yeah.
Second, there's timefall, which you saw in the trailers. It's rain that hyper ages anything it touches and causes equipment to decay. So all cargo has a container around it, like a briefcase, that absorbs damage and shock, whether you get hit or your packages fall off or somebody pulls you down and you fall over onto it. Once the container is damaged completely, the cargo then takes damage, which lowers your rating once you deliver it and can result in a game over if you break a story or mission critical item.
Okay.
So timefall is a problem. If you have to move through timefall, then you have to make a judgment about, like, is it faster? Is it worth taking the damage to my stuff? If you have equipment out on your, like, in your hands or on your belt, it will degrade very fast too and become unusable. So you can bring 8 ladders, but if you have 2 of them on your belt, then they just waste away and you can't use them anymore.
So are there mechanics in place for you to avoid these time falls? Like there's like a cave you can crawl into and stay dry from the time rain.
Yes, there are natural structures. There's also just the choice of where do I go? Because it doesn't matter how you get to your destination, just so you get there eventually. You can completely circumvent an area with rain in it. It just makes your journey longer and you might need more supplies. And then you have to carry more, which makes your handling harder and you run out of stamina. Like I said, a lot of factors here. The third one of which are enemies. There are enemies in this game. So there are the aforementioned fanatical cargo dudes who have lost their minds and just want to deliver any cargo they can for the thrill of it. That's not a joke, that's very true. This is probably where it gets most fan and pain, like you were mentioning. There are these encampments of dudes who will just be like, hey, and then they'll run after you and try to take your shit. So that's when you're like navigating AI soldiers and knocking them out or using guns to shoot them if you want,
And this is when you mentioned that they won't even necessarily try to kill you. No. They just want your package.
They just want your shit.
You could in one of these encounters, you could lose to them and they take your thing and then you just have to like saunter back off into the hills without your package, but you're not dead.
Then you got to get it back. Or someone else has to get it back. The social strand system, we'll get to that in just a second.
The SS.
SSS. The other enemies are the BTs, which honestly are terrifying. the first time you encounter them in the game, because you don't know, like every Metal Gear game has that moment where you like fully quantify the AI and you're like, okay, I know exactly how close I can get. I know exactly what will alert you. So you do eventually get to where you can navigate BTs without getting into too much trouble. But man, the first time when you're getting dogged by invisible ghosts that will summon oil monsters to just yank you into another dimension is horrifying. And like all the music cues and sound cues and stuff are just super on point. But yeah, if a BT detects you, it'll summon big old oil guys who climb out of the ground and yank cargo off your back and damage it. And possibly even then summon a giant Cthulhu-style eldritch terror that can really, really mess up your day. The first time it happens is a real gamer moment, I can tell you.
So you mentioned like being able to kind of circumvent those BTs, and a huge thing of a Hideo Kojima game traditionally is the aspect of stealth.
Yes.
So where does that kind of factor into Death Stranding? Like, is Death Stranding a stealth action game? Previous like Metal Gear Solid kind of was.
Yes, there are strong elements of that there, but each enemy has its own sort of AI and own mechanics. So BTs respond to noise and I think just your movement in the area. If you hold your breath when you're close to one, which you see in the trailers, it helps you kind of get by without getting detected. The problem is, like, you can't see them most of the time. You can do this pulse that reveals like little clouds of dust, basically, but that's it. So all the tension around BTs is navigating around things you can't really see, but your little like pack will point to, and will spin more frantically when they're closer. So you have kind of imperfect information about them, but you can sort of stealth your way through, but then you're moving slower, and you're under timefall, because BTs only exist in an area with strong timefall. So your stuff is degrading while you're being dogged by these ghosts that mean you can't move fast, while you're basically sitting under acid rain, and a million other factors that basically always put tension on you. The dudes, the mules, the fanatical delivery men, those are the closest to like traditional Metal Gears guys, because they'll just run after you, they'll try to shock you with an electric prod and then just take all your junk.
Hate when that happens.
And then yeah, you can give them the old like 1, 2, 3.
The CQC.
Exactly. Yeah, you can give them a good right hook, but that's not the intention of the game really. It's about navigating obstacles, not shooting them, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So in addition to all that, there's tons of other considerations too in regards to the world simulation. Sam's stamina depletes as he's out, depending on how much cargo he's carrying and the terrain you're navigating. Your shoes wear out, you gotta replace those. You can equip different exoskeletons that like straddle your legs to help you deliver stuff, either carry more cargo or run more quickly, or just navigate rocky terrain. There are so many factors once the game is sort of mechanically complete that go into just taking a package from point A to point B, that it really does make it like a super interesting game to play. You come to all these sort of Robert Frost impasses and really cool gameplay moments that offer total freedom to you as the player. You know, you take this peaceful valley that you know has timefall and probably ghosts in it, or do you climb the mountain that is open but harder to navigate? It'll take longer, but you brought some ladders.
So you are mentioning even like that the items get so granular to that your shoes will wear down over time. Is there like almost like a character customization aspect to it where like there's different outfits and you can do like the Fashion Souls thing and do, weigh like what looks cool versus what has good armor ratings and stuff like that?
Yes, there are tons of side missions or other optional deliveries you can do, and those will unlock tons of extra guns and gadgets and little trinkets. Some of those are you can customize the color of your backpack, you can put add-ons to your backpack. For your particular suit, you can customize the color and change how it looks. I think the big thing there is you can equip like armor plates. So if you know you're gonna come into a firefight, you can just bring all armor plates on and then they'll deflect bullets, but that'll take up load points so you can carry less. You can equip heating pads that will keep you warm and reduce stamina drain when you're in snow, which is a big part of the game if you're in a mountainous area. So there are elements where, yeah, you can totally kit yourself out in varying degrees for the environment and the task you're going to do. But it's always that risk reward. Like if I'm gonna climb a mountain, I could bring 8 ladders. I may only need 2 of them. Then I carried all this crap all the way and it didn't matter anything.
But it's like having that situational awareness. It seems like it's such a big part of the mission. It's reminding me of like in Phantom Pain when you would prepare for a mission and know that like, okay, Intel's told me that there's probably a tank on my route, so I'm gonna bring like an RPG.
Super, super similar decision making. I don't want to extend the parallels too far, but that part of it, yes. You will look at your route, look at where you're going. You'll examine an overworld map, and then you can actually like drag waypoints to have a route to follow, which isn't always a straight line. And then yeah, you're right. It is evaluated judgment call of carrying all the gear you want versus trying to find stuff in the field, which can happen, or picking up cargo that other players have dropped, part of the social strand system that we'll talk about in just a second. So yeah, it is basically nonstop decision making with true consequences to the decisions you make, which to me is one of the more profound parts of a good game. It allows you to make decisions that have choice and then actual consequences that are visible from the choices you made. So yeah, the game part in that regard of Death Stranding really does empower you to scout, think, prepare, execute, and then improvise when things kind of go to shit. It is a really cool feeling, and one that not a lot of AAA games have, to like on your own without prompting come up with a plan and then follow it through and then have it work. Very different than just running to the end of like a hallway with explosions going off and shooting a guy in the face.
Okay, kind of non sequitur. Like what I've seen so far in gameplay and trailers looks like a very nondescript, like Midwest looking, like grassy, hilly, snowy type sections. I mean, like how's the variety of settings in the game?
Basically every kind of natural terrain you can think of is reflected. There's like swampy areas. There's places with a lot of rivers, which is a problem for traversal. There are grand flowing plains, which are the best because you can just take off. And then mountains. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you go to some wacky places in addition to that. I mean, you've seen in the trailer there's like the Mads Mikkelsen dimension, which is basically like World War II. There's that. It does a good job in that regard of environments, of using the Decima engine to create some very beautiful natural scenery, but then also tossing you into this just like psychedelic, weird dimension where you're fighting a giant lion with a squid face and a I don't want to say too much about it because honestly discovering it and seeing it it's a punch, but the game proper, when you're just delivering packages, it's mostly just you're navigating natural landscapes. But then there are times where you go into just fucking wacky Kojima town, and that's a fun trip too.
Yeah, so another thing you've been teasing a bit is the social aspect of the game. I know you mentioned it's kind of got that Dark Souls-y, leaving things behind in the environment element. What is that all about?
Yeah, so this is the thing that, I mean, some people kind of latched onto. Kojima sort of tweeted about it, about this, how this will be the next big gameplay system. I kind of get what he means, and I don't think he's wrong.
Whoa.
So yeah, the social strand system is essentially that in the game, everything you place in the world can be shared with other players, like the aforementioned ladders and ropes, but you can build structures too. Those require depositing of resources that's kind of over any one player's head. So you can start a structure and then other players can contribute to it so it builds, but you can build generators that recharge your batteries for your exoskeleton. You can build bridges to cross rivers and canyons easily. Just full-on highways even, that let you cross entire sections of the game without being bothered by BTs or mules, which are the fanatic deliverymen. That kind of trivializes the actual game part of it, but it requires so many resources to build a highway that it's not that realistic to think that any one player could do it. So the catch is though, you only get shared structures when you're in an area that has access to the chiral network, which doesn't exist the first time you go into an area and creates a really awesome gameplay loop. So the first time you deliver to a new place to convince them to join the network, you only have the tools you're bringing with you and you have to navigate the landscape. You don't get any intel from other players because you can put up signs to warn people where there are BTs and stuff. You only have your wits and the tools you bring in. Then once you connect it up, then all the support from the other players comes in. So that's when you get the roads, the bridges, the generators. You can build all this stuff yourself. It just takes so long on purpose. And this is where it's like, okay, Kojima, you're actually kind of smart, God damn it. That gameplay loop links up to the game's themes really well, that humankind can achieve a lot more by connecting and sharing their experiences than living separately, which is what a lot of games are about. Games are all about being the strong dude with the gun who does it on his own. So much of Death Stranding is the opposite. It's like you're just one guy in a world that is way bigger and stronger than you.
Is there a way to kind of keep, like, to vet, like, which of the structures actually populate in your world?
It's a good question because, yeah, it's tempting to think that you just round the corner and there's a field of dumb icons, which sometimes does happen, and it can be honestly a little charming. But there is a sort of cap on how much the chiral network can support. So there's only so many structures that can be built in the open world. Also, just having played it, I got the sense that there was a system in the background managing how much stuff got populated in. There is, and I don't want to get into it because it's a weird system and it takes a long time to explain, but there is a likes system in the game where if you put down a ladder and somebody else uses it, they'll send you a like. And if you use somebody else's ladder, you can just mash on the touchpad of the DualShock 4 to stack up as many likes as you possibly can in like 5 seconds. The amount of time you get to give people likes also upgrades based on how you perform. There are layers and layers and layers of depth to this gameplay system that I don't think we have the time to talk about. But
save the social currency for a post-release.
Yeah, for a think piece or something, because it's ripe for that. But I get where they're going with it. However, I think all that said, you may not like that if you just want to kill shit and get stronger. That's not what Death Stranding is about, but that is sort of the like power fantasy that's present in most games. There's nothing wrong with it, don't get me wrong, because I like shooting stuff too, but in Death Stranding, it's often more efficient to dodge enemies completely, and the entire game is based around navigating constraints rather than overcoming them or shooting them to death. So yeah, the whole game is encumbrance. It's managing a load. It's distributing packages. It's having to say no to things because you can't do it all yourself. And the game makes that point. You even begin to rely on and contribute to a greater communal effort. There's even an aspect where like you can find packages dropped by other players in the wild and finish their delivery for them, or not even that. You can just take it part of the way and drop it off, and you still get a reward for doing your part. And then another person can find that package and deliver it the rest of the way themselves, and then you get a reward if you played a part in that. So it's actually really smart and really works because it doesn't really rub it in your face, but it does take a bit of brain stretching to get around. However, I can see people balking at this game because it does make you feel weak. You move really slowly and you have a million resources to manage, and the story is thick. Boy, is it thick, and it can get pretty damn pretentious.
Like 3 C's thick?
I would say maybe even a fourth. I think Kojima might have found the hidden 4th C. Because, yeah, there are some very long-winded soliloquies where people act. Ooh, and there's just a lot of crying.
With a cast like that, I hope that they're working it out.
It's ack with like 5 C's.
Ack.
Yeah, he protect, but he also ack. In addition to all of that, I would consider up until now, these are all pretty subjective things that people can probably choose whether or not they like. There are some, what I would consider objective problems with Death Stranding. The controls, there's a lot of, the action space of this game is wild. Sam can do a lot. He can pick stuff up, he can throw it on his back, he can put it on his hip, he can put it into a carrier, he can put it on a car.
Piss!
He can piss. You can piss whenever you want, provided you got a little piss in the tank.
Is there a dedicated piss button?
Not dedicated, no. But there is a dedicated menu slot for pissing.
Okay.
So this game is button dense, and if you played a Metal Gear, you have an idea of like, the entire, like there's tap controls, there's tap and hold controls, there's tap and hold and then move a stick and then let go and hit a button. And there's a lot. There's a lot of buttons and it takes a while to get over. That's not what I would consider an objective problem because all those buttons actually do something. They're there for a purpose. Menuing is super funky. A lot of menus have you make all your changes, like you're distributing cargo, putting it where it needs to go. And then you finalize everything by holding X. So you're navigating around, hitting X to move everything, finalized by holding X, because if you hit circle, it'll be like, oh, you're about to discard all your changes. Weird. But there are also menus where you make all your changes and then back out with the circle, and it doesn't matter. So I don't know why, like, you kind of have to get a sense for which ones want you to hold X and which ones want you to hit circle. Most are hold X. It's just a weird thing. Like, there's a lot of little weird learning curve moments to navigating the game's menus, and there are a lot of menus, but you can get there. It took, I want to say about, again, like 4 hours of cutscenes of not knowing what the hell's going on. And then I want to say like 2.5 hours of playing the game before I really felt like I was hitting a flow and really figuring it out, so.
That is good to hear though, because I me having not played it yet, I am trying to help but not think of it in comparison to Phantom Pain, and the menus in that game were incredibly obtuse, and I think even after dozens and dozens of hours, I still never really got that like muscle memory, like I can navigate them quickly, so that's interesting as like a worry that already stands out to me.
There's so much information to convey. Some of Sam's movement through the world it's just frustrating. A lot of buttons have multiple contextual uses. Sometimes they're stacked like 4 or 5 deep on the screen of like, hit triangle to do this, hit square to do this, hold square to do that, hold left trigger to do this, hit tap left trigger, that whole thing. So here's a specific circumstance. L2 will ready your gun if you have one equipped, but it'll also pick stuff up off the ground with your left arm if you're standing next to something you can pick up. Or you'll just steady your left backpack if you're like wobbling around. That's a whole other mechanic we haven't even talked about. But sometimes if you have a gun equipped, you'll still just do this, which is great when you're in a boss fight and you're like, I need to shoot this right now. And Sam's like, hup, and you're waiting for the reticle to come up and it just doesn't. And he's
that's waiting. A lot of very different actions to have be on one button. And I'm getting slight pangs of the whole Red Dead 2 thing where it's like ultra realism. It's like, oh, if you forget to equip your gun as you're getting off your horse,
yeah, you just don't have it. You're 100% right. The Red Dead comparison is dead on, and if you chafed at Red Dead, Death Stranding is that even more so. Going back to like the previous problem of the controls, if you just pick something up at the wrong time, you just put it back down, no big deal. But there are times when they put you into basically boss fights, when you have to fight something. And combat, this game is not a combat game. There are times when I took losses because I really needed to throw like a piss grenade at someone. That's also a real thing. And instead of letting that piss fly, Sam was just, hup, and then just got slapped in the face with a big Cthulhu oil tentacle, and then I fell on my suitcase and
cooked my piss grenade for too long.
Haven't we all? The other thing that I would consider kind of an objective fault with the game is the animation can be real plotting, which, like you said, very Red Dead 2. It feels like you're steering the game more than controlling it. You give the game a suggestion, and then you hope that what emerges a few seconds later corresponds roughly to your inputs. Most of the time, it is actually fine. Moving Sam through the environment feels great when you do it properly, like you've threaded a needle basically, but sometimes Sam will just do stuff completely contrary to your inputs. Directly, there was a moment where Sam was like, he was standing and I was like, okay, Sam, here's what we're not gonna do. We're not gonna walk off that cliff. And the cliff was right here and I was like, okay, here we go. No, Sam, don't. Stop it. And he, ah! So sometimes, I swear, Death Stranding decides what the next 2 to 3 movements are going to be based on what needs to animate properly, and whatever buttons you hit just get tossed out.
Whoa.
Or it's just, okay, we're gonna do the next thing, because there's no way to animate from what he's doing right now into what you're telling him to do. I've had Sam walk off cliffs and bash his face into rocks, despite really trying to get him to stop. A lot of the times when that happens, you hold the 2 triggers to make him really hunker down and then just let Jesus take the wheel and hope that he stops himself. Because sometimes he'll just be wacky legging around and tripping over stuff and dropping things and you're just like, well, okay, he's lost it. Okay, so I spent a fair amount talking about some of the failures of the game. I wanna be clear. I really, really enjoyed my time with this game. To the extent I don't think I'm done. I wanna go back and play some of the side stuff because there is a weird, goofy Kojima streak in this game. It's largely a very dour kind of game. But Kojima's a prankster, and some of that stuff is still there, so I'd like to go find it. Like I didn't find Conan O'Brien. So yeah, the story is profoundly unique, even if it topped out on my pretentious scale a number of times. When the game actually lets you play it, the gameplay is unique and profound, and I don't throw those words around lightly. The gameplay mechanics and decision-making present in Death Stranding are unique, and they work really, really well. I have a lot of fond memories that I consider truly my own because of how open the game actually was and rewarding a player choice. And as someone who's been playing games for a long, long time, over 2 decades at this point, and gotten a little exhausted of games that just exist to make you feel as powerful as possible, Death Stranding is actually really refreshing and exciting, and it did tickle my heart a little bit. The sensation of connecting to other players and like the real communal spirit of playing this game with other people, it really did something for me. It may not for you, but it did for me. At the end of it all, I think that you, the viewer, and you, Zach, you can pretty much trust your gut when it comes to this game. It's exactly as dense and pretentious as the trailers kind of present it to be. The thing that it doesn't present is the gameplay, and there is a really great game there too, but if you can't sit through 4 hours of Norman Reedus holding a baby and crying on a beach with a dead whale behind him to get there, then it won't matter much. You'll be out before you even get there. So I think it's a fantastic work. I very much enjoyed it. I give it 1 very cute. It's the cuteness scale. Exceedingly cute baby in a jar out of a very ugly baby.
How many piss grenades would that translate to?
Oh, well, you get a good 3 out of a solid piss, so I'm gonna say 3, except the last one is a little discolored. So there you have it, Death Stranding. I would recommend it. Yeah, it's totally a game. Like that's not snide. A lot of game reviewers like, yep, it's a video game. That actually means something here. It is a real good, fun to play video game with a crazy bonkers ass story laid on top of it and a world that actually is a great framework for a lot of questions about the human condition. Yes, that's what we're dealing with here. If that makes your eyebrows perk up, then this game is everything you want. If that makes you go like, what the again, trust your gut. And I think it's totally fine to say this game's not for you. You shouldn't feel an ounce of judgment over that, but it is a well-made game for those looking for something very, very different. Turns out that was me. And if it's you, please tell me what you think about that ending in the comments, because boy, I need some theories to bounce off of. But for now, thank you for watching our review. Hopefully it gave you the information you needed. And welcome back, our Holy Lord and Savior, Hideo Kojima. It's been a long time, yeah.
Keep it to control, and surprising no one, we have some thoughts, as Lawrence alluded to, about reality and perception and the manifestations of our deepest and darkest thoughts. Fun stuff.
Yeah, so we'll give you a second to get mentally prepared. So Control is a game that centers heavily on corruption of the incorruptible, or at least the supposedly incorruptible.
Space